Good afternoon, everyone. This is Greg Giardino and Steve Craffen with the Atlas team here at Wealth Enhancement. And we have a very special presentation for our viewers today that are medical professionals on Roth conversions. So, Roth conversions have gotten a lot of press recently, and in fact, the last 5, 10 years, still a hot topic. Many medical professionals want to know, is a Roth conversion appropriate for me? How can I benefit? And it can be a very savvy tax strategy
Yep.
when executed at the right time.
Yes. And by the way, both for you and also for your descendants as well, your children potentially.
It can absolutely be a huge tax planning item for your descendants and your heirs. And what we'll review with you today is a live case study on a client that hypothetical client that we might have worked with,
Right.
and how Roth conversions impacted their plan. We'll review with you some of the big pitfalls you need to pay attention to and everything about Roth conversions. So, with that being said, we'll dive into this. And before we begin, just to note for all our viewers today, this will be very general in nature. It will be advanced education we'll be providing you today. But just know, if you're looking for specific advice, this is the wrong place. Please speak with the appropriate tax, legal, or financial advisor
Right.
whenever you do these things, because it's very easy to make an error, and it can be very devastating to your financial plan if you don't get specific advice before you implement these.
And I want to mention that we're not tax preparers, we're not CPAs, but we do help people with their tax projections and scenarios. But by the way, I want to mention, if you have a CPA, we're happy to work with that person. As we include them as part of your team. We act as the quarterbacks, and we'll work with any of your existing advisors as well.
So, for those of you that may be new to this, what is a Roth conversion? So, conversion simply means transfer. So, many of you may be familiar with contributing to a pre tax 403B, 401A, or 401K, and putting money into a Roth component or doing a Roth conversion is simply taking that money that's pre taxed, it's never been taxed, in your 403B, 457 plan, 401K, paying the taxes now, and simply moving it over into a Roth IRA or a Roth 403B, so forth. So
Yep.
that's simply what a Roth conversion is. And the nice thing is that there's no income limitations on who can do a Roth conversion.
Right.
So, unlike contributing to a Roth IRA, if you're married filing jointly and you make over $252,000 a year, you're precluded from even contributing to a Roth IRA directly.
That's right.
However, when you do a Roth conversion, you could be making $1 million a year. It doesn't matter. You are eligible for this strategy.
Right. Now, we'll mention, if you're doing a conversion from an existing IRA, right? You're younger than 59 and a half, you'll have a 10% penalty, though, right, Greg?
Yes, and be
Yeah.
careful, because if you also withhold for taxes on the Roth conversion from your IRA, that will
Right.
also trigger that 10% penalty.
That's right. And so, if you do this, what makes a lot of sense is to use other taxable assets you have to pay the tax on the conversion, rather than pull additional monies out of your IRA. And typically, that's the best way to do it, because you'll actually end up with more in the Roth and net. So,
Oh, that's a great point, Steve. And also be mindful, when we say you'll pay taxes, make sure you incorporate federal and also state taxes as well.
that's right. Yep. Especially if you're in New Jersey or New York.
So, Steve and I, when we meet with medical professionals, physicians, and so on, there seems to be an urgency to get the money into a Roth IRA or Roth account now. And it's one of the biggest misconceptions that we see, because one of the most important considerations is the tax you pay when you do the Roth conversion. And
Yep.
hopefully, it's at a very low tax rate. And we're going to show you this chart here to illustrate that point. So, a fun little family fun fact you could share at the family table this evening, if you want to get a little bit more street cred with your family members, is something called the Rule of 72.
Yep.
So, what is that? You can take any number and divide it by 72. So, when you, any rate of return, pardon, if you're earning 10% in your account, if you're earning 7.2% in your account. If you divide that number by 72, the rate of return you're earning on your money, it will tell you approximately how long or how many years it would take for that money to double.
That's right. And it's a
So,
rule of thumb. It's not totally accurate, but it's a good rule of thumb. It's a good, nice thing to use, keep in the back of your mind, and in a quick way, calculate how long it'll take for your money to double. I just want to mention one thing here, by the way. I know you're going to bring it up, Greg. On a traditional IRA, it looks like at a 10% rate of or 7.2% rate of return, your money will double in 10 years. But the problem is in a traditional IRA, you have a partner, right? You have two partners. And who are those two partners in that IRA? Well, the federal government and the state, if that state has an income tax. And so you may say, gee, I have $2 million, but guess what? After my partner gets done with me, I only have 1.4 million. And so you can bring up the rest, Greg, because it's a really great slide. It's really an important point you have here.
yeah, so essentially, if you start with them, so if you look at both the traditional IRA, you start with $1 million, you're earning 10% on your money per year, 72 divided by 10%.
Yep.
Money will double in roughly 7.2 years. I'm sorry, I did that backwards. If you're earning 7.2% rate of return per year, it will double in approximately 10 years. So
yep.
You can see it goes from 1 to 2, assuming a 30% tax rate. You have 2 million in 10 years, times by 30%, you have 1.4 left over after tax. Now in the Roth IRA, the inverse happens. You pay the tax up front first. So your $1 million that you start out with, immediately when you're taxed at 30%, becomes 700,000. And then if it doubles rule of 72, the same rate of return, you wind up with the same after-tax amount of wealth.
Yep.
Now,
and
what
have
happens?
No partner.
No.
In that case,
if we could disinherit Uncle Sam, we would love to do that. So
absolutely.
But Roth conversions may be a way of legally doing that. So what if there was a way to change the tax rate on the Roth IRA when you put it in? So what would happen in that instance? So if we go to the next slide, well, let's start with the traditional IRA, same thing. Assuming a 30% tax rate, you have $1 million. 10 years, it grows to 2 million. 2 million times 30%, you have 1.4 after-tax wealth. But the Roth IRA, when we do this Roth conversion, our tax rate, hypothetically speaking, is 15%.
Right.
So we start out with 850. Now 850 doubles to 1.7. You now have almost $300,000 more because of the rate when you put it in.
That's right.
So Steve and I will tell you, you never want to let a low tax bracket go to waste.
Never.
And you typically want to pay taxes when your rate is the lowest, because that will allow your money to compound. And you'd rather pay 15% tax now than do a Roth conversion when you take those dollars out in your traditional IRA 10, 20, 30 years from now and pay 30%. There's an opportunity there. There's a tax arbitrage you could take advantage of.
And also, you may result in you being in a lower tax bracket when you do have to do the required minimum distributions on your traditional IRA, because there's no requirement for that on the Roth. And even if there were, the money will come out tax free. Those RMDs could push you into a pretty high tax bracket when you're age 73, when you have to do the RMDs, and you could end up being depending on the size of your IRA, it could be in a 35 or 37% bracket, federal alone. Another New Jersey or New York, maybe another 6 or 8% on top of that state tax. So you could be in a 44, 45% bracket, and it has other ramifications, which actually Greg and I have talked about in the past, including the fact that now your Medicare premiums could go up as well, and they could go up per person up to an additional $700 a month potentially. So there are significant ramifications here, and so that's why it makes a lot of sense to try to look ahead and do some long-range planning. So
now let's just take a hypothetical example here. Here we go. Actually, let's start with this slide first. So hypothetical doctor couple, Joe and Joanna Cohen, and they have sizable net worth. And I believe Joe is around 68 years old, Joanna 65. Just a quick case here. They have about 4.5 million in investable assets. And they would like to do some Roth conversions. So taking a look at this, we looked at their tax brackets. not just today, but out into the future. So, directionally speaking, we're able to estimate where we think things will go. And since Joe will retire very soon and Joanna's already retired, well, guess what? These turquoise lines you see here indicate federal taxes that they will pay.
Yep.
So you could see that down the road, it starts very low and then it goes high. So essentially, they're in a very low tax situation between now and I believe 2045,
Right.
before Social Security kicks in,
That's right.
and also before the required minimum distributions kick in. So we can kind of look at this chart here and say, hey, this green on the left, so to the right is all the income tax they would be paying. And by the way, we can estimate over their lifetime at the end of their financial plan, how much in assets do we think they'll have? So
Yep.
at the bottom right, we could see they may have 3.2 million left in their portfolio after accounting for withdrawals. And their cumulative tax bill, their lifetime tax bill is about almost $1.9 million. But we see before 2029 here that there could be an opportunity in the green to take advantage of these low tax bracket years. So what can we do? Well, one potential recommendation is to maybe accelerate some of those taxes down the road into these low tax bracket years. So a hypothetical example here, what if Joe and Joanna converted 200,000 in their 403b pre-tax at 68 and 69, 200,000 for both years. So that's $400,000 there. And then in ages 70 to 71, convert $100,000 each per year. So that would be a total of 600,000 that would be going into a Roth conversion or
Yep.
Roth IRA. So as you can see here, it's a huge deal. It lowers their lifetime tax bill by about $276,000. And if they took that money, those savings, and they reinvested it back into their plan, it would increase their final end of plan value from the $3.2 million number to almost 5 million, 4.88.
Yep.
So this is a huge tax planning opportunity. And a lot of folks may miss this
Yep.
because they're not ready, they're not prepared, they don't know what tax brackets they're in or the tax rates they'll be paying, which is very important. We'll talk about that in a minute. But you can see
Yeah.
this is a very powerful strategy.
And the other aspect to this, it gives you more flexibility. So suppose you did do this, you converted significant portion of your traditional IRAs into a Roth. So now your RMDs are much lower, argument's sake, when you hit 73. But perhaps you still have high needs for income or money, liquidate money from your IRAs. You can decide on a year-by-year basis. All right, this year I want to take more money from my Roth because I'm gonna have some other large need to spend money, but I don't want to be pushed into a 37% bracket. So it gives you year-by-year flexibility. You can look at your whole circumstance on a year-by-year basis and say, all right, I'd rather pull from my Roth this year, and maybe next year I'll pull from my IRA. Rather than do it this year. So it gives you more flexibility.
And usually the medical doctors and physicians in retirement that have more sources of income,
Mm-hmm.
they have more chances to win the game and control their tax brackets.
That's right.
That's a great point, Steve.
Yeah.
So while we talked about when you execute these Roth conversions being in the lowest tax brackets as a main factor, there's also some ancillary things you may want to pay attention to.
Yep.
So if you have over $1 million in qualified accounts, $2 million plus, etc., well, you may have a required minimum distribution problem down the road at 73 or 75, where you have to mandatorily take out money from your 403b, 401k, 401a, no matter if you need it or not. So usually this type of work can be very additive when done the right way. As Steve mentioned earlier, it really would make sense to pay for the taxes on this Roth conversion away from your pre-tax accounts.
Yep.
Doing so could really add to the amount you can convert to a Roth IRA. And also there'd be a little bit of savings as well, a discount.
Yep. Yep.
You may want to consider, well, what if you're going to move to Florida or a state with no state income tax?
That's a great point.
It could swing the pendulum either way to doing a Roth conversion or not doing a Roth conversion. If you could save an extra 6 cents on the dollar, could be a reason to wait, and you really want to run that inside your financial plan.
That's a great point, Greg. Yep.
We also don't know where future tax rates are going. If you think they're going up,
No.
well, could be a minor factor, something to pay attention to. We talked about required minimum distributions. Here's one. What if your beneficiaries are in high tax states? What if you only have one child, one beneficiary? They are single, they live in a high tax state, and they also are in a high income tax bracket.
That's right.
Well, guess what? If you compare that to having 3 children and maybe one's in a high tax bracket, 2 are in low tax brackets, well, guess what? The one with the single child in the high tax brackets, that can be very concentrated, and doing a Roth conversion can be very beneficial, not only for you, but for your one child. So that's something we also take a look at, not just over your time horizon, but also your child's time horizon as well.
It also provides other opportunities, like you said, if you have 3 children and one's in a high tax bracket and the other 2 aren't. So the one that's in a high tax bracket, you might want to designate that person getting the Roth, and the other 2 people that are in really low tax brackets getting a traditional IRA. Because ultimately, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're fair in terms of how much you each get in after-tax dollars net, ultimately. So.
All right. So a common strategy for most folks is called filling up your tax bracket or your current tax bracket. We have a picture on here. These are the 2026 income tax brackets from the marginal federal income tax bracket. So as you can see in the middle of this graph here, we have the 10%. It goes all the way up to 37%. So hypothetically speaking, if you're a physician and you're making a decent amount of money, and let's say you're in the 24% marginal federal tax bracket, and your taxable income is, let's say, $350,000. Well, guess what? Once you hit 403,550 and above, you spill into the 32% marginal tax bracket.
Right.
So there may be a reason for you, if you run the numbers, if you're at 350,000 of taxable income, well, maybe you want to do another $50,000 in a Roth conversion,
Right.
so that you don't spill over and pay the higher tax rate by about 8 cents on the dollar.
That's right. And we also, when we do this, we always want to make sure that if you're on Medicare, we have to make sure that you're not getting hit too badly by the adjustment in Medicare premiums based on income, called IRMA. But we obviously we can talk about that. We have in the past, by the way, too.
And conventional wisdom will say, well, and if you look at TikTok and you look at what's going on in Instagram, a lot of these influencers, they'll tell you, oh, well, you want to do Roth conversions between the 10% and 24% marginal tax bracket. Right. And you want to defer income from the higher tax brackets, 24% perhaps to 37.
Yeah.
We don't like that. We don't think conventional wisdom works.
No.
It's very nuanced, and you got to pay attention, as we just spoke about, your beneficiaries. Also, well, what if there's a big gap in age? What if Joe in that case study was age 80 and Joanna was 65? Well, guess what? We can probably imagine that Joe's going to pass before Joanna. And guess what? The widow tax is pretty devastating.
It is. Yes, it is.
When somebody passes and you're married filing jointly, the surviving spouse is subject to single tax bracket rates, which are very condensed. And by the way, generally speaking, a widower, a single filer, will be paying about 10% more than somebody married filing jointly. So not only that, you can only collect one Social Security benefit. There's a drop in income. So having that scenario could really push a Roth conversion maybe into a different tax bracket than what general advice would give.
Also, a drop in the standard deduction is another aspect. So that's something to consider as well. So
now, conventional wisdom would say in retirement, to have the most tax efficient retirement plan, you want to first draw down from your taxable accounts first, right? Any brokerage accounts. Then draw down from your tax deferred accounts, those pre-tax 403Bs, 457, 401k plans. And then don't touch those Roth IRAs. Touch them last because they have the most growth appreciation, most tax benefit.
And no partner.
But actually, there's some academic research. We use at our firm that's very powerful that shows if you have taxable accounts, well, maybe you want to draw those down,
Yeah.
use the money to pay for Roth conversions. And if you do them within certain tax brackets and certain tax planning windows before Social Security happens, before required minimum distributions happen, you could actually end up having, when you whittle down the taxable account, literally just your tax deferred account and a Roth account.
Right.
And if you do this during certain times with certain tax brackets, you could actually prolong the life of your portfolio by up to 7% longer than following conventional wisdom.
So I want to mention one thing is that there is some risk here from the aspect that will the tax rates be higher or lower in the future? So I think the risk is to do this acceptable, even if the tax rates are lower, because we don't know if they're going to be lower. But there is already a proposal. Some people in Congress were proposing raising the top rate to 43% recently. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think the risk is greater on that side than the idea that you paid at a higher rate now and rates went down. I think the risk is greater that they're going to go up. Personally, I hope I'm wrong, but
There's always a concern for that.
yeah,
That could potentially happen.
yeah,
Now, Steve, I don't know if you want to touch on this slide,
sure.
but the importance of reviewing a tax return. I mean, you got to be doing it.
Yeah, you do. You know, like I always like to say, you know, it's a silly joke, but you know, the problem with accountants sometimes they want to bayonet the wounded, but we don't like to do that. We like to try to do tax planning throughout the year and run various tax scenarios, and not just on a single year, by the way, because you got to look across several years at once because things change. You may have a need for a lot of money out of an IRA one year, so you're going to be on a higher tax rate that year, or we may just make other decisions and may say, well, gee, you need money on December 15th. Why don't you see if you can delay it till the following year so you don't have to pay the tax on it until the following year and gain another year on it, on delaying paying the tax. But we'll run through multiple scenarios, and this is just a very, very small sample of what we can run. We can run very, very advanced long-term projections on the efficacy of doing these Roth conversions. And we can run through multiple scenarios and try to decide what scenario seems to be the one that's most likely to occur. So the type of analysis we can do, it's very difficult for you to do it if you don't have these advanced tools that we have. But this was some fake clients that we put into some of our tax software just to show you. And I think here what you've done is you've run a couple of scenarios here. You ran one scenario for 2024, but we have 3 other years in here, so we can kind of see a trend there too. But we can run, you know, for 2026, I could run 5 scenarios in 2026, each with subtle changes to them, and see what makes the most sense. So there's a lot of things we can really test, and it's very hard for you to test this on your own unless you have this type of these sophisticated tools that we have. It's also some knowledge too. You know, we've been doing this for years. You know, we've been personally looking at people's tax returns for many, many years, so we have a lot of experience doing it. But we're not CPAs. I'm gonna tell you that. Anything we do, we're happy to provide you a detailed analysis. You can bring it to your CPA as well, and we're happy to work with that advisor as well. We don't want to leave them out of the loop either if you have somebody you trust. So,
If there's one thing you could take away for our viewers from this presentation, it's one of the points, one of the biggest Roth pitfalls is this. Your marginal tax bracket is not the same
right.
as your marginal tax rate.
Yep.
So a lot of folks will think, hey, I'm filling up my tax bracket, my 24% marginal tax bracket. And then when it comes tax time, they realize, oh, wait a second. I triggered those Medicare surcharges, IRMA, and I also got hit with the net investment income tax of 3.8%. I thought I was paying a 24% tax rate, and now I'm actually paying a 30% marginal tax rate.
Yep.
So one of the things that our team can do is we can find out the implications. If you do a Roth conversion of 100,000, 200,000, whatever the number is, does it trigger these hidden taxes?
That's correct.
And what is the rate you're actually paying? And in some instances, it can bloat your Social Security income taxation.
Yep.
It can hurt if you're retiring early from Medicare ACA subsidies if you have to hop on the exchange.
Yep.
And another thing I want to bring up on here is the One Big Beautiful Bill Act.
Yep.
So if you're a medical professional and you're approaching the income levels of 500,000 to 600,000, this can be really catastrophic. So what I mean
Yes.
by that is if you do a Roth for every you may have heard of this, the new SALT deduction. It went from 10,000 to about
To
$40,000.
40,000. Yep.
But that's for folks married filing jointly that are making under 505,000 of what's called modified adjusted gross income for
Yep.
2026. So between 505,000 in 2026 married filing jointly of modified adjusted gross income to about $606,333, there's a phase out now. So if you hit 606,333 in 2026 of modified adjusted gross income, that $40,000 SALT deduction now becomes 10,000.
Yep.
So that could be a big deal because when you do the math,
Yeah.
every dollar you're over that threshold of 505,000, you lose 30 cents on the dollar of that SALT deduction.
Of that deduction. Yep.
And
So
actually,
effectively, you're in a higher marginal bracket in that range.
and in some cases where you thought you were paying 30, if you did a Roth conversion at
Yeah.
505 of 100,000, and now you're at 606,333, well, guess what? What happens is now your marginal effective tax rate is not 35%, it's now 45.5%.
That's right. Yep.
So this is a big deal. You need to be aware of how the tax law interplays with some of these Roth conversions and some of the hidden taxes because it can be very nuanced and get really complicated really quickly.
We call it a tax torpedo, by the way.
It shoots out of water and hits
It's
you.
it's a nasty surprise.
So
Yeah, go ahead, Greg. And I just want to mention real quick. Go ahead, Greg. What are you going to mention? I just want to mention who we are. Just give you a little bit more details of who we are after this.
yeah, so just some closing thoughts here. It's critically important that you have a plan in place. You also run some pro formas to see, well, what do you think will be your tax situation, right? Because there's a lot of different sources of income, right? There's dividends, there's interest. If you're tax loss harvesting or not, that can make a difference in lowering your modified adjusted gross income.
Great point.
Are you maximizing all pre-tax plans? Do you have a health savings account you could take advantage of? These are things you have to be thinking through to make sure that you're executing these Roth IRAs, these Roth conversions at the right time and to make room for them.
Yep.
So I think that's part of the message we want to impose on you today is that it can get very complicated. You need to run the numbers or else you may get hit with a unpleasant tax surprise.
And I want to mention also, it's good to look at this. Don't look at even Roth conversions in isolation. You want to look at it in terms of your entire circumstance and run projections to make sure you actually have enough money in retirement and how the Roth conversion will affect that. So there are multiple tools that we use to try to run various scenarios to make sure you're okay. And Roth conversions may make a lot of sense for you or they may not make sense for you. We can run very, very detailed analysis to help tell. And I just want to mention this is a QR code. You can click on this, right, Greg? And I guess, what does it lead to, Greg?
So it's a simple first name, last name, email address. You can, in the comment section, write Atlas Team. That's our team here at Wealth Enhancement. We'd be happy to review with you, complimentary meeting.
Yeah.
We'd be happy to give you 20, 30 minutes just to make sure you're optimizing your Roth benefits, whether it's through work, whether you're thinking about doing them down the road, reviewing your financial circumstance with you and perhaps lead you in the right direction from a general guidance standpoint.
And just to let you know who we are, we're fee only. We don't earn any commission. In fact, I've been fee only since 1998. I've been in this profession for some time. And we have some of the highest levels of education in the profession, quite honestly. We're big believers in being in education and staying up with the latest tools and techniques within this profession. And I personally was national chair of a financial planning organization about 8-9 years ago called NAFA. What's good to know is because we are fee only, we have the fewest conflicts of any advisor. So in other words, if we manage money for a client, we're not picking a certain investment just because we're being paid. We're never paid by anybody except for you. We're only paid by the client. So I always like to tell people, I'm actually your employee if you hire us. So you can tell us what to do if you want, but we don't have a conflict. We're going to treat you as we treat our own family, and that's how we view it. So.
So we hoped our viewers today learned a little bit more about Roth conversions, when they make sense, when they really don't make sense. Once again, there's a lot to think through when you do these. Critically important, put it in your financial plan. Don't do
Yeah.
one of these free calculators online. They're not really going to do you much justice.
No.
You really have to see all the sources of income, Social Security, if you have pensions, if you plan on taking IRA distributions early,
Yep.
and so forth. So really needs to be a comprehensive looking type of scenario, or to make sure that you're not only directionally doing them right, but also when you meet with your accountant, your CPA, that you're on the same page.
Great.
All right. So until next time, we will see you soon. Stay tuned for our next MD Life publication we'll be putting out next month. And until next time.
One thing I want to mention real quick, this video, a recording of this video will be on our YouTube channel, which is called It's Your Smarter Money. And it'll also be on Wealth Enhancement Group's YouTube channel as well. So you can rewatch this if you want, or show it to someone else. It'll be on, and share it with someone else, and it'll be on those two channels.
Great point, Steve. So you can follow us on the YouTube channel, and we will see you all soon. Take care.